Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be doing my next recent reads video. I've had a rough reading month in May. I didn't even read all 5 of these in May. One of them that I'm going to talk about, which I'm actually going to start with, is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and I actually finished reading this one in April. So this is the first book in the Stormlight Archive series. This is going to be a 10-book fantasy series. There are currently 3 books that are out, and the 4th book is coming out in November of this year. So I felt like it was a good time to get on board and to start picking them up and to hopefully read the 4th one in time with the rest of the community as it comes out, because I think it'll be exciting. There's going to be a lot of buzz around it. That was, assuming that I enjoyed this one, which I very much did, so I'm 100% planning on continuing the series. It's so rare to find a new all-time favorite book, and this one totally fits that description for me. I loved it so much. I think that Brandon Sanderson just has such an excellent way of crafting characters, and the way that he teaches you about the world is always really informative, but is also really exciting. I think he does a really excellent job of giving you all of the information that you need, all of the exposition, all of the background on the world and the way that things work, and he really demonstrates the magic system instead of telling you, like, this is how this works. Like, he will have something exciting happen and be explaining through that event how it is that it's happening. So it makes it really interesting for the reader instead of just being like, this is how this works. This is how this works. I think he's always been really good at that, like judging by the Mistborn trilogy as well. This is such a difficult book to summarize because there's just so much going on. I think what I'll say is that we're focused on 3 main characters. The first of which is Alanna, who is a noble, and he's the brother of the king who was murdered. So he's uncle to the current king on the throne. He's a high-ranking military officer, but he's recently been having doubts about the way that they're doing things, and he's become a lot more interested in peace, and he's a very fair and just leader, which is pretty rare for somebody in his position. There's basically like the high class of people who are the light eyes and the low class of people who are the dark eyes. Dalinar is a light eyes, so he's not the kind of light eyes that like abuses his power. He's a really good person at heart, and he's having all of these philosophical internal crises, but he doesn't want everyone to think that he's going crazy. His storyline is really interesting. Then we have Kaladin, who was sold into slavery, and he is really struggling, but then he adjusts his attitude a little bit, and then he's just trying to survive and trying to give the people of Bridge 4 hope. Bridge 4 is one of the armies that's part of the king that Dalinar works for's force, but Bridge 4 in particular always suffers extremely high casualties. There's pretty much no hope. If you're put on Bridge 4, like, that's kind of the end of the line for you, but Kaladin really makes some positive changes within that group. And there's also Syl, who is like the best character ever. And then our third character is Shallan, and Shallan is going to hopefully become like an apprentice and learn more about history and writing and all of that kind of stuff from a character named Jasna, but her real motivation behind going is that she needs to steal something for her family so that they can sell it and not be in any financial trouble anymore or have like kind of mob guys on their backs. All 3 of the storylines do end up intertwining, but it takes a really long time for that to happen. You really get a lot of time knowing each of the characters. My hand is killing me. This is a heavy book, which is partially why it took me so long to read this, because it was just uncomfortable to read the hardback. And speaking of that, I started reading this book on ebook, which was a good choice because it's so heavy. But then also I found that I really liked reading the physical copy better because there are a lot of illustrations throughout here, and I just felt like I didn't get as much detail, or like I couldn't read the tiny print in some of the images in them when I was reading on ebook. So for that alone, I would really suggest reading a physical copy. And also same thing, like I don't think I would read it on audio because then you would miss out on all of the illustrations. The magic system in here is really cool. There's a whole lot of lore behind this world. So the world used to be protected protected by these people called shard bearers until one day they just up and disappeared and left the world in disarray. If you are able to get one of the shards, which is like a crazy looking sword, you're gonna be super powerful. So a lot of people are fighting over them. There's a war happening within the world, and the people that are shard bearers are the ones that are the most feared, but a lot of the fighting comes over trying to kill the shard bearers in order to get their shard from them. I think I just need to like stop there because I could go on forever about this book. Basically, I loved it. I think that each of the characters is really interesting. I truly thought that Shallan was going to be my favorite character, but then I ended up loving Kaladin so much, and he totally like overshadowed her for me until we got to the end, and I feel like Shallan's story got a lot more interesting, and now I'm so excited for book 2 because I think she's going to have one of the biggest parts in it, and I really want to see what's going to happen with her. If you are someone that has not yet read any adult fantasy, this is not the book to start with. I would definitely start with something a little bit more accessible. This is going to be a really, really in-depth, really dense adult fantasy book. It's totally worth it, but if you're someone that has never given adult fantasy a try before, I think it'll lose you pretty early on because it does tend to have a lot slower of a pace. And there are a lot of different perspectives throughout the book to keep track of, so it can be a lot for someone who's not used to doing that. But with that being said, I really loved this book, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars if you couldn't tell. Oh man, I'm so excited not to hold that anymore. Next, I read Nightfall by Shannon Messenger. This is the 6th book in the Keeper of the Lost City series. This one is continuing on the story of Sophie, who is someone that in book 1 was new to the Elven world, but by book 6, yeah, she's become a pretty pivotal member of Elven society, and she's definitely like a chosen one character, but I really just love each and every character in here. Like even the characters that I don't love, they're the kind of characters that you kind of love to hate, which is the mark of a great series. I always talk about how much I love Keith, and that definitely continued on in this book. However, I really like Tam. I think Tam might be one of my favorite characters in here. Definitely not as a love interest for Sophie, but he's awesome. Like I think he might be my favorite character in the series, which I thought that Keith would always be my favorite, but I think it's Tam. One of the things that I will say about this one is that there is a situation in here where there are best friends, and one of the best friends has a crush on the other best friend, but that best friend doesn't feel the same way as the other person. The way that it's handled is excellent. Like, it's so good that the characters communicate with one another and work out their feelings without, making things weird forever. I think it's such a good example, and it's really nice to see that in a middle grade book. Honestly, all I can say about this is that the stakes just continue to get higher. Book 7 is going to be nuts. I don't even know how the series is going to end, but I'm definitely going to be caught up in time. I only have to read book 7 and book 8, and then book 8.5 is coming out this year, and then I hope the conclusion will be coming out in the following year. But I love the series. If you have not given it a shot yet, I highly recommend you doing so. It's addicting. It's so quick paced. They're big books. It starts out very much influenced by Harry Potter, but so quickly turns into its own thing. But it still has that engagement factor, and I honestly would not be surprised if in the future this series amasses a very large following as well. I don't think anything will ever top Harry Potter, but I think that if anything were to even come half as close, it could be this series. This is another one that I actually gave 5 out of 5 stars, so even though I didn't read that much, it was a pretty good reading month. Then I read Alanna the First Adventure by Tamara Pierce. Alexa and Mackie from Alexa Loves Books gave me this series for Christmas like 3 years ago now, and I finally read the first one, and I'm kicking myself for taking so long to do so because I really enjoyed it. This is following a girl named Alanna, and she has a twin brother, and he really wants to learn more about magic and healing and stuff, and Alanna is very interested in becoming a knight, but women are not allowed to do that, so she convinces her twin brother to trade places with her, and she cuts her hair. They switch places when they're supposed to leave home and like apprentice to move on to their next step. So Alanna assumes the name Alan, and she starts working at the palace and training to be a knight, and she's very, very powerful. She has a lot of heart, and I think that part of the reason why she does so well is because she wants it so badly, but she makes some really good friends within the palace. She distrusts some other people, pretty rightfully so, and it was just such a fun adventure. I mean, it's called Alanna the First Adventure. It really is an adventure, and it was a really good first installment in the series. I think that once I continue on, I will end up loving it a lot more. Like, I really enjoyed what I did read, but it's so short that I just like really wanted more, and I'm glad that there are 3 more books in the series. I really like the prince in here. I really like the friendship between the two of them, and I really like, can't say that, that'll be spoilery. There actually was a part in here though, I will warn you if you are sensitive to what's happening now with the pandemic. There's a sickness part in here that I was like, oh, that kind of came out of nowhere. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of hitting close to home right now. I mean, I was fine reading it, but I'm just saying in case you're sensitive to what's happening. But I really enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Undercover Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. This is the second book in the Bromance book club series. I really enjoyed this one as well. I was kind of nervous going into it because I had heard some negative things about it and people saying that they didn't enjoy it as much as they enjoyed the first book, but that wasn't the case for me. I really loved this one too. I do think that I liked the first one better, but I still loved this one. I really like Brayden as a character. He was awesome. Like, he was just so great, and he was such a great love interest, and I really like all of the topics that are addressed in here. I think that everything is handled super well. In this one, we're following Brayden and Liv. Liv is Thea's sister. Thea was our love interest in the first book. In this one, Liv has just gotten fired from her job after she witnesses a very famous chef that is taking advantage of another woman, and Liv is not having it, so she's kind of like going on this crusade to get this guy to stop so that he can't harm any other women, but she's having a really hard time getting any of the victims to speak out because he's such a powerful person. So her and Brayden team up together in order to take him down, and along the way they end up falling in love with each other, and it's so cute and it's really good. Like, it was just so enjoyable. I loved it so much, and I really liked getting to see all of the other characters again from the first book. I'm so excited for the third book. I really like the characters that it's going to be following. The one thing that I will say about this, which is not a complaint about the story itself, but I bought a finished copy of this book, so this was not an ARC, but there were so many spelling errors or just grammatical issues. It was kind of shocking to me that this book made it to publication the way that my finished copy looks. About like halfway into the book, I had found at least 5 things where I was like, that's not correct. Normally, like, if there's, you know, one typo or whatever, I would just let it go, but it just seemed like there were an overwhelming amount of them in here, and that totally surprised me. But it doesn't take away from how much I still love the story. I'm just pointing that out because it was something that bothered me as I was reading, because then I was really aware of it, and every time I would come across another one, I would be like, oh, again? So I don't know what happened there. This was really cute. This was a really great romance. I loved it. I give it 4 stars. And then the last book that I read is The Legend of Korra, and this is the Turf Wars library bind up. So it collects all 3 graphic novels within this one bound up book. In this one, we are following Korra and Asami, and they've just gone on a vacation after all of the events of the ending of the TV show Legend of Korra, and it's really cute. And this one really focuses a lot on Korra and Asami's kind of coming out. Korra hasn't ever done that before, so she is just telling people for the first time that she's dating Asami, and she's met with some resistance here and there, but then other characters are obviously like overwhelmingly happy and positive for her that she's found someone that she loves, and they make a really great couple. They're also dealing with another threat within this book, but I do feel like that plotline took a very secondary stance to the like Korra and Asami being in love storyline. So while I did like this one, I didn't like it anywhere near as much as I love the Avatar comics. I think those are like perfection. This just wasn't for me. I don't know if it is because I don't love the characters the same way that I love the Avatar characters. Maybe in future installments I will love it, but I find like the world to be more interesting than romantic relationships within both Avatar and Legend of Korra. I think that if there's a stronger plot in the next story arc, I will potentially enjoy that one more than I enjoyed this one. But on the other hand, I think it's wonderful that this story exists, and I think that this is going to be something that is so good for people who can personally relate to Korra and to Asami. It's wonderful that this is published and out there for those people. I just personally would have liked a stronger plot within the world, but I still enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 stars, so it's not a new favorite, but I did like it. So those are the next 5 books that I read. Let me know if you read anything that I mentioned, and let me know your favorite book that you read in the month of May. So that's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!